Commissioner
Is
Williams?
there any public comment or questions on that one?
Oh,
All right. Okay, I am bringing back the issue regarding the board's decision to engage Cavalier Law Group. I am first going to ask, is there any conflict of interest in this discussion?
yes, there is. I will recuse myself because of the conflict of interest, because of an accusation and a point that Mr. Bowman has brought up. And he believes in fair and fair and right is right. And so, Commissioner Williams, do you know who Matt McDonald is and who his employer is?
Yes, I know Matt McDonald is.
Okay, do you know that he gave to your campaign
Yeah,
and he works for George Wentz?
okay.
Do you have a conflict?
I don't, I would have to ask Bill Wilson if there's a
Interesting
conflict.
concept.
Look, so we don't have to remove to being negative. We can, I'm doing the right thing by saying Bill Wilson. If a Mac McDonald, which I thought he used to be employed, he was part of the central committee. Because we're not hiring, in my understanding, this is not hiring, he's hiring. The issue was they voted to hire Mauricio for a training program.
Okay, so we're kind of, I'm addressing this for the first time today. Didn't realize that that was going to be an issue. So let's see what we can do shooting from the hip.
It's an easy, if you say yes, they can't hire because you don't have a.
Right. So I mean, the thing is, I do actually know who Matt McDonald is. A friend of mine, he coached my kids' football team. He's a great football coach. But I don't know what his employment relationship is to Davalier, or if he works there or not. So really hard for me to say. If there was let's say he did, hypothetically,
His,
if he works for,
title is paralegal.
okay. Well, in that case, I think that there's something, it's a red flag. I don't know if I can't give you a clear-cut answer on this.
So could I offer a suggestion? Then is it reasonable for the board to void the decision that was made last week because you cannot have a quorum if you bring up those two items? And so they
It
shouldn't
would
be
certainly,
solicited?
it would certainly be the safest thing to do.
Well, that-
What my suggestion would be that at this point, right, while we're trying to figure out some serious issues, I think the board can always return to this issue at its discretion and decide to actually engage Davalier or agree to some provision of training. The fact that there's so much confusion about this now, it's an uncertain landscape. My recommendation would be that whatever decision was reached or not, that it be considered voided and that no work be performed by Davalier at this time, until such time as we've had an opportunity to really get to the bottom of these issues. I would hate to see this decision move forward and potentially have unintended consequences that we can't predict at this point.
It's the safest thing.
I think it is, yes.
So
Thank you.
the question is though, so although Matt contributed to my campaign, my vote was to not hire Davalier, and my motion is to disengage from that relationship. So
Right.
can we move? So we are on opposite parts of this discussion. I didn't vote for Davalier. But my motion is to do essentially what you're saying. How do you achieve that if you knock out two people? So my relationship with Matt McDonald was he's part of our Republican Central Committee and politically activated Christians. So I don't have any relationship with Davalier Law Firm.
Right.
But we have to move forward with a motion in order to remove what was done last week. And my argument was, it wasn't clear. Commissioner Bradshaw told the community that we didn't actually hire, but the motion was to engage. And he made that statement in an email.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah, so what I would recommend is at this point, because the motion is to basically undo whatever was done before,
Mhm.
I would say go ahead and proceed with that.
okay,
Do that. And then that way we've kind of reset the clock back to zero, and then we can take time to breathe and try to understand if there is something there that needs to be looked at. We can do that later. I would just not recommend moving forward at this time, given the uncertainty that we're dealing
Sounds
with.
good.
Is that better?
that sounds fantastic.
Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't believe that I've received any money from Davalier Law. But what I would like to do, Mr. Chairman, if I could, because I was the one who made the initial motion. I also attended the Idaho Association of Counties board training. And what I'd like to do for the general public is to present that so that there can be an understanding of what is actually being asked by my motion, which is not to engage a law firm for legal counsel, but to engage a law firm to provide a training program for our committee. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I would like to entertain that so that I could present to the general public the training that was received, and then they could see why I'm trying to do this.
So Commissioner Ahmed, I would say, so we're trying to address a threshold issue right now of whether or not, whether it's legal or professional service, it's something of that nature. Before we can even get to the substance of what is being suggested, what is would like to be offered, we have to address this other underlying issue before you guys can even move on from that. So I guess if you're just, if it's a public service announcement to say, here's what I'd like to see, that's fine. But I would recommend that the board stay focused on this underlying issue, resolve it first before we go into the substance of what you're trying to accomplish.
I've tried to be clear in my conversations, and I will admit, I have been admonished, rightfully so, for making a muddled motion, for which I apologize to the general public. I am also concerned if, as a board, we start limiting First Amendment rights of people and restricting their political speech. And I guess I'm curious whether it's Commissioner Williams accepting a campaign contribution. Does that qualify as a pecuniary interest? Because as someone who's sitting up here, what I'm struggling to understand, Mr. Wilson, is George Wentz, Mauricio Cardona, and Matt McDonald's First Amendment access to their republic is limited. And there was a Supreme Court case called Citizens United where even corporations have access. And so I'm curious, in a county with only 52,000 people and only a certain amount of lawyers, is that the tack that we are saying here today? Is that if an individual contributes of their own free will the fruits of their labor, that then their employer cannot be utilized by county government? I have significant struggles with that.
I think for me, the difference is, one, this wasn't the county openly, transparently soliciting for something. This was a specific discussion that went from Davalier, specifically discussed with both of the commissioners and the prosecutor's office. And then a decision was made off of that. So I don't think it's comparable to say, I have not hired Davalier for anything. However, a sitting commissioner has actually engaged their services. And so from the view of transparency, that's a valid concern. And so that was only part of the reason to undo what has happened. And it's not a matter of what training can happen, because what I was going to, when you go down that road, there was no recommendation from our own attorney to do this. They can provide this to us for free because we're already paying them. So it's not an apples to apples to say Asia got $100 from Matt McDonald and Bradshaw got $4 or $5 grand and hired them while he was running in for other issues. That's completely different
for anything.
That's a completely different
Make
scenario.
your statement accurate.
Guys,
Steve
I
Bradshaw
don't want to
has
litigate
never
those
hired
issues
them
now.
for anything.
Litigating those issues now is probably not fruitful, because we're trying to.
Game by it. Let's go back to the original motion.
So what we could do.
So it's dead in the water.
Well, no, because he's saying we have to make a decision, because if you leave the motion dead in the water, then it means you are still engaging, which is hiring the law firm. And so what is being said is we need to disengage, which is the motion that I was trying to make, is to disengage from the agreement to engage with Davalier Law Group to make a training program. That's the motion. And so what Bill is saying is we all can vote on that motion because it's untangling us from the problem, and then bring it back later if Commissioner Ahmed wants to make a case for something, right?
That is my recommendation, yes.
So, but to be clear, I believe that our council is advising us. He is not directing us. The role of the Board of County Commissioners is to make these decisions.
Yeah.
And
100%. I agree.
I'm just checking, so.
So I'll make the motion if
well,
you guys
but
don't second it. Then
Commissioner
we're good.
Williams, if I may. So. In regards to how I'm gonna vote, I do appreciate the advice of counsel. I took the advice of counsel and I got beat up for 2 weeks legitimately. Because I voted against Zoom. So now I have learned to question decisions that are made. And as I was trying to bring forth, there's an awful lot of counsel that is employed by this county that does not reside in this county or the state. So I've got some pretty good sized concerns. So could you please
First
address
Amendment?
the First Amendment concern?
Totally. Because
I will not vote for something that's taking away someone's First Amendment rights, period.
okay, so there's.
I don't know what's so funny, Mr. Bowman. I
So the-
support them.
So here's this is a discussion that I've had looking at this statute because it does infringe on political speech. Here's the problem. The statute is presumed constitutional. And so it's probably not for, at least not, certainly not for me. And I wouldn't recommend for the Board of Commissioners either to unilaterally decide that a statute is unconstitutional based on your interpretation of the First Amendment. So although that could be a good argument to be raised down the road, if the statute was, the statute was attempted to be applied for penalties resulting from that, you could make that argument probably to a judge. But I wouldn't recommend just jumping to the conclusion that a statute violates the First Amendment because it was passed by the legislature. And I don't think it's really at this stage, that's at this level, it's appropriate for us to make that determination. We need to presume that the statute is lawful. So when the statute says that you cannot provide anything of pecuniary value to someone who is sitting in a discretionary decision for a contract that is going to be, or for the giver is going to potentially benefit from, yeah, that in this case, it could have a chilling effect on political speech, but I don't know if it's our position or authority to just unilaterally say that that's, violates the First Amendment and therefore we don't have to follow it. I certainly wouldn't recommend it to the board.
Thank you.
So somebody clear up what the motion is.
I moved that Bonner County disengage Cavalier Law Group to provide training services.
Is there a second? Wow.
Training lead law regarding open meeting law. Thank you
So-
for letting me read your lips through that.
So
So
can I vote?
So
Because I
Just
have to
for that
recuse
purpose,
myself?
I would say yes. I'd say yes, because you're
Okay.
essentially going against, the whole premise that you would, if there was a conflict of interest, that you'd be doing something to the benefit of Cavalier. To support that motion would be
Yeah.
against that
Okay, well, I'll
interest. And
step
so,
down from the chair in a second, I think. With the permission of my legal counsel.
let's remove the second.
You have to call for a vote.
Roll call vote.
No.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, it is 10:18 and we will